Hello and welcome. My name is Michael Cunningham. I'm Executive Director of the University of Oxford's North American office based in New York. On behalf of my colleagues throughout the Oxford University community, I'm delighted to welcome you to this session today. I should start by saying that wherever you're joining us from, we hope that you are well and that you and your loved ones remain safe and healthy during these challenging times. The word Oxford is very familiar to an American audience. There are, of course, Oxford shoes and Oxford shirts, but most importantly, a wonderful University of Oxford. It's a familiar word, and yet still there are some mysteries involved at the University of Oxford. We like to remind our friends, however, at the other great British university, that when people say Oxford in the United States, they don't think of Mississippi, but they think, of course, of England. But nevertheless, despite that great familiarity, there are some nuances and some differences between applying to Oxford and applying to universities in the United States. And so we're happy to have today a session that will hopefully answer the questions that you may have about applying to Oxford and will demystify the process for you. This session will last about an hour, and there is a Q&A involved. So if you have a question that you'd like to pose, please use the Q&A function, and our speaker will do his best to get through all of them in a timely fashion. So again, thank you for joining us, and please do ask questions throughout. Our speaker is from the university's admissions office, Tom Trower, and he'll be doing a brief presentation and then opening up the line for dialogue and answering any questions that you may have. So again, thank you for joining us, and enjoy the presentation.
Fantastic, thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everybody. It's evening for me. As you can see, it's slightly darker in where I am, but that's the way it is. A little bit of housekeeping, I guess, before I start. I mean, Michael's pretty much covered everything, really, but if you do have any questions, please do use the Q&A function. That's what it's there for. I will try and get through as many questions as I can at the end. However, bear in mind, I am from the centralised admissions team at the university here in Oxford. I'm not with a particular college or a particular subject, so I may struggle to answer any niche questions that you have about a particular subject, but I can certainly signpost you in the right direction. So, you know, if you do have a question, please do pop it in there. It's just that I may not be able to answer it as fully as you'd like me to be able to do so. And as I go through, I'm going to be doing a general overview of the university itself and then focus on application, which should be really, really useful. But if you do have any questions as I'm talking, then please do pop them in the Q&A as we go along. So I have a bit of a chronological idea about the questions, and they then therefore link with what I've been talking about, essentially. What I'm going to do now is share my screen and the slide. Maybe a thumbs up or a yes from any of my colleagues on the panel, just to say they can see everything there. But I'm going to start with Oxford Is. Now, first off, however, just a little bit of interactivity from me, really, which is if you could please open up another tab, and whatever you're using, or if you're on a mobile device or a cell phone, then you can open up a new web browser. Go to slido.com and just pop in the number there, 867488. I've got a couple of questions just to ask from the outset, which will help me and guide me with regards to what I can talk about or what I should focus on as we go along. I have seen that we've already got 5 questions in the Q&A, which is fantastic. So yeah, go along to slido.com, put in the 6-digit number there, and then I will continue on. So the first question I've got is just to find out who I'm actually talking to in general. So I can see that 28 of you have signed up to that. That's fantastic. Thanks very much. I'll wait a little bit longer, but yeah, please do pop in your answers. I'll probably get to, how many have we got? 142. If I go for about 80, if it gets to 80, which it is raising up to, I'll click next, and then I'll still have the record of it by the end of the session, so that's fine. We're getting there. Fantastic. There we go. Good stuff. So, okay, this is very, very useful for me, apart from other. So the majority of people we've got in here are parents and guardians, which I'm assuming we may have alumni, so welcome. Welcome. And then 20% of you are students, and then some school teachers and stuff like that. So that's useful for me. So obviously parents and guardians, if you are alumni, then things may have changed since you left. So then I can refresh you. And with regards to any school students here, then potentially you may know nothing, you may know lots, but it's a good chance to recap. So that's a good mix. Fantastic. And obviously some of you may be sat with each other. So they may have some school students with parents and parents with school students. It just depends. I didn't have an option for that. Okay, next up. This is more broad. Try and keep it short. But what would you most like to know about Oxford? If you can try and keep it around maybe 1 or 2 words, that'd be really, really useful. So it could just be interviews. It could be finances. It could be weather, which I'm more than happy to talk about because I'm British. Lots of things like that. So essentially, pop in a couple of words, and then I'll be able to see exactly what is the general gist about what people would actually need to know about or want to know about from this. And it's going to be wide ranging, I understand that, but it's still quite useful just to have a look at before I start proper. And again, I'll probably get to about 50 because there's probably going to be lots of questions on this one. So we can probably go as we go along. Lovely, lots of things. So admissions process, applying across, admissions for international students, lovely, personal statement, that's always useful to talk about. Scholarships will come up, I can talk about that for sure. Lovely, admissions process, lovely. I'm going to be talking about that a fair bit because it is obviously very, very important. Personal statement, 2 colleges, excellent. The environment itself, very good. What Oxford looks for, I will definitely cover that. Okay, I'm going to keep that running in the background, so please do continue to pop in any of those things that you want to find out about. I'm going to get started properly now. So thank you for doing those things. First off, I'm just going to see if I can minimize this. I don't think I can. Yeah, first off, essentially Oxford is what you make of it. So it is world-class education that you get, and you really do have some fantastic opportunities that essentially, as a student, so those of you, there's 20% of you that are students, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do here within reason of the courses that we offer, but you can make of Oxford whatever you want to make of Oxford, because there is no typical Oxford student and there is no single Oxford experience that happens when you come here. You really do make of it as you will. If you want to stay in your room and study all the time and just visit the libraries, go for your life. If you want to go out and be a social butterfly and obviously do your studies too, because that's very important, you can do that too. We do not have a typical person or type of Oxford type of student that comes here, and I think that's really, really important to say from the outset that it's really is what you make of it. So I think that's really, really important to stress from the off. But just a bit about Oxford in general, world leading. So as of in Times Higher Education's world rankings, we were #1 and have been ranked #1 for 6 years running, which is pretty good. And we've had this this thing for years. It's something that we've had for centuries, really. This leading centre of learning. It's really old. Oxford, like 12th century, I think, when one of the first colleges started out. So it's really, really old, and it's had been this centre of learning in the Western world for a very, very long time. So we do have that prestige and a lot of history behind what we do, and been able to build and build and build on that. And obviously, it's something that still now in the contemporary world we are ranked relatively high in quite a few, across a few different rankings, and #1 in the Times Higher Education World Rankings as well. Also, we're at the heart of groundbreaking research. The easiest and obvious one you can see here is the AstraZeneca vaccine, AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine that got produced last year, and being the research centre for that vaccine, and having the academics and the postgraduate students and potentially undergraduate students in those areas being involved in that, which is just amazing, fantastic to be able to do that. And that's just one example. And also, as talking to you in the US, Oxford's truly worldwide. So the university itself is part of a beautiful city, but we really do have connections worldwide. That's because our undergraduate and postgraduate student body, as well as the staff, is incredibly diverse from all over the world. I think over 150 different nations for staff and over 170 odd different nations for students. So there's lots of diversity from all different countries around the world, which makes Oxford City a fantastic little melting pot with lots of different clubs, bars, restaurants and everything else like that. But you're part of that community, and obviously students graduate, hence the parents and guardians that I'm talking to today. And some of those stay in the UK, some of them go back home, others then go and live and work in a different country again. And this fantastic network forms, and you would be a part of that if you chose to come here. Just a little bit on Oxford and the US, though, which I think is quite useful to see. So these are not the most recent. So actually, students find out today, potential applicants find out today if they've been offered a place at Oxford or not. So this will update obviously every year, but currently there's around 1,600 students at the university and 246 of those at undergraduate level. So that's quite a few students postgraduate wise, but 246 at undergraduate level. And that means that the USA students, American students, are our most populous international cohort. There are, as you can see here, 25 alumni groups. So there's lots and lots, and over 30,000 alumni as well. Just a bit of extra information. So entry requirements, I'm going to share that ox.ac.uk/intqual, so that's international qualifications, with the chat later, because it's got some really it's got all the information about taking American tests or the qualifications that you do in the US and seeing if it's allowed at Oxford. So all of the information's in there, which is really handy. So I'll send that in a bit. But also, just what I thought would be really interesting to see is the popularity of courses. So on the right hand side of this table, you can see these are all students, all undergraduate students choosing courses to come to Oxford. PPE, which is philosophy, politics and economics, is number one. Then medicine, mathematics or math, law, and then economics and management are the top 5. But with regards to US students, PPE is top, which is generally most countries, PPE is quite high up there. But then economics and management, history and politics, so a joint honours degree. That's 2 different degrees at one time, because it works slightly differently in the UK. Mathematics and computer science, again, a joint honours degree. So normally you just pick one thing. So mathematics, for example, you just do mathematics and you look at different things around mathematics. You wouldn't do all these different minors and majors together. You just really focus on the one course. But we do offer joint honours degrees, which I guess a lot of US students are choosing to do. So that's to give you an idea about the popularity of courses that US students choose to go for. With regards to studies, as I mentioned, Oxford is very much your experience of Oxford is what you make of it. And the main thing, and that comes from, is you get to study what you love. That's the whole point here. You want to be studying something that you love, because it is it's a full-time job studying at Oxford. It's roughly, we say, 40 hours a week, of which a lot of that is independent study or just studying yourself. So you're not going to have teachers or anything like that at all. It's you studying your subject 40 hours a week. So it's pretty intensive. And the type of studying that you do here, or anybody would do here at Oxford, is really here to develop your thinking and to really get you to delve into a subject. So as you progress through a course, you look further and further into it and specialise as you go along. With regards to learning, we have lectures and seminars, but the thing that stands Oxford apart from most of the universities, apart from maybe Oxford, potentially Durham and St Andrews, is our tutorial system. And the education that these provide, the type of teaching that this is pretty unique. And is really the main reason why we have one of the best reputations for learning or teaching in the world, is because of the tutorial system. And these happen in the colleges, and essentially they're central to how we teach at Oxford, and they are pretty much, to boil it down, just a conversation with somebody who knows a lot about the subject that you're going to be talking about, and that's pretty much it. And it's a really good, and it's usually 1 or 2 students with an academic, which is a really good ratio. Most universities, it's much bigger numbers than that, or it's in a big lecture theatre and you're having to learn from the front. But the tutorial systems that all the colleges provide a fantastic opportunity to learn in a completely different way to what you may have experienced before. We've also got some fantastic libraries. So everybody, I think, if you think of Oxford and the fantastic buildings we have, you've got the Radcam, which is the Radcliffe camera. That's usually just seen as the Bodleian Library, but actually the Bodleian libraries, there's loads of them. They're everywhere. It's just that that's probably one of the prettier ones from the outside. But you have access to all of these as a student. So there's some really fantastic facilities as well, much like the museums that we have too. So the Pitt Rivers, the Ashmolean, the Natural History and the History of Science Museum, they're all fantastic. Pitt Rivers is one of my favorites I've ever been into as a museum. It's truly, truly amazing. And as a student, again, you have access to these and to come and use them, fantastic spaces, and actually useful for your course if you're studying archaeology or biology or history. Whatever it is, you have access to it, and they're really fantastic. And finally, as well, we've spent a lot of money recently, 400 million, it says here, on our science facility. So there's some really fantastic new lab spaces available. I mentioned about the AstraZeneca vaccine that was being done with Oxford. Obviously, that's taken place in state-of-the-art labs as well. So there's some really fantastic stuff generally at the university for somebody to come and get involved in, especially if you wanted to study here. But obviously, if you wanted to come back and see what's going on, they're there as well, which is really good. With regards to the community side of things, as mentioned, all students have their own experience, but they all form part of an inclusive and supportive community here and beyond study. So I mentioned about the alumni networks, but there's a couple of extra things as well where that carries on with. And central to this is the college system. And that's one of the things that really does make the Oxford special. A lot of UK universities do have halls of residence. So that's maybe where you go in first year, in your first year of study, you stay there, you get put up in a block of other students, and that's where you live. But with a college, it really is much more than accommodation and food. So you've got accommodation, food, you've got your IT services, you've got your libraries as mentioned. That's where your tutorials are taking place, or seminars and lectures as well, potentially. You've got loads of people that are living there that are studying different courses to you in different stages of their life. There's a family system there whereby you may have students as parents and grandparents as well, who when you first arrive, they help you through and just getting you settled in and making sure you know where everything is and make sure that you've got things that you need. And then when you get into second year, you then become a parent yourself. So as an international student, especially somebody who's coming from as far away as America, you have this instant social community that you can slot into and feel welcome, which is fantastic, as well as obviously having, as regards to US students, it's our biggest cohort of students as well. There's help when you need it too. So you've got the colleges are there, but the university side of things as well. We have lots of facilities and things available for people to have if they need it. So there's a counselling service. You've got the Students' Union who provide independent student advice as well. You've got peer supporters. So I mentioned the parent system, but there are trained up other students at Oxford who work as peer supporters, who work on the Oxford Nightline as well. Most, if not all, colleges have a GP, so a registered doctor that they use through, as well as registered nurses too. So there's lots of stuff with regards to help and support if you need it too, which again, as a student who may be coming from overseas, would be really handy to have. And there's also a lot of fun here. So I think most importantly, what stands out, quite a lot of, well, most universities have these, but Oxford, we have over 400 different clubs and societies. So that's sports clubs. I've got here theatre shows and theatre clubs that happen. You've got volunteering and fundraising. There will be nationality clubs as well. You don't have to be of that nationality to join the club, but there is obviously a USA society, but there'll be loads. There'll be Canadian society. There's religious societies as well. So you can join any of these. Fantastic, again, support. So it's like a social group to be a part of as well. Instant support network. Fantastic. And mentioning about sports too, we had our Freshers Fair recently, so that's where everybody gets to find out what's going on and sign up to things. We have an American football, really strong and big American football club as well, if you wanted to do that sort of thing. It's all there to be joined, and it truly is fantastic. And again, if you don't want to do any of these things, you do not have to. It just depends if you want to do them or not. So it's there if you want to join in, and if you don't want to join in, there is no pressure on you to do so. But the options are there. And on the other side, it's just a really lovely place to be. I think colleges themselves, they have they are their own mini cities. So I mentioned all the things they have, like food and accommodation, but they also have really quiet, reflective spaces, little green areas, little squares inside that only really students or staff are going to be able to get into. People, some actually tourists can get in if they pay to get in, but I mean, that's then most of the time you do have the space to yourself. And then outside of that, there's loads of public parks, open green spaces to go to. London isn't too far away, really, by train or by bus. There's some really good student deals to get those across there. And it's just a good place just to relax in as well. And I think that's really, really important. Moving on to the costs of actually attending as an international student. So there are two main costs. Number one will be your course fees, and number two is living costs. So what I've got here are just example costs for 21 to 22. So this current academic year that we're in, these are subject to change. So just bear in mind that most likely the year after next, next year, the year after next, these will more than likely go up a little bit. Definitely the living costs, the course fees, it really depends. But the annual course fees you'd be looking at as an international student about 31 to 37 thousand pounds. So that's, I think I've got here 57 to 72,000 dollars, and the living costs are about 10 to 15,000 pounds as well. So it really depends on, again, if you want to stay in, you're going to spend less money, but if you're going to do more things, then you're going to do more things. So the living costs are really under your control a bit more, but the actual course fees, that's what you're going to have to pay. As it says at the bottom here, medicine course fees will be much higher than this. That's something to research yourself if you plan on doing medicine, but that's what the fees are currently. I'm going to talk about living costs just to go over it again. You will have to pay accommodation fees and your food as well. And I mentioned social activities here, so that could be joining those clubs and societies. It could be taking the train to London. It could be taking the bus out into the Cotswolds to go and have an explore around, or going to other cities. So again, it depends on what you want to do. Accommodation wise though, it can be quite a range, because there are over 39 different colleges to choose from. Some of those, they have a range of costs as well, and range of rooms. So you may have a college that is quite old and quite small rooms, so therefore maybe slightly cheaper. But you know, if you want to spend less money on that, or you may want to get an ensuite in one of the newer colleges, so therefore it's less drafty, so less wind and stuff like that, maybe a bit warmer in the winter. Those would be the things that would change a bit and concertina in or out, depending on how much you want to spend. But that's probably the best information I can give you with regards to costs. Those are the two big things that you're going to need to think about. If you or your son or daughter or whoever it is thinking of coming to Oxford, those are the main costs that are coming in. I guess, and I'll talk a little about scholarships as well, I guess, because I don't think I have a particular slide for it, but I'll mention it on keeping costs down. Oxford costs around the same as most of the UK universities, really. There isn't much difference, and actually colleges provide the subsidised food and entertainment as well, so that maybe brings it down too. Also, Oxford has really short terms, so about 8 to 9 months. 8 to 9 weeks, not months. 8 to 9 weeks per term, and only 3 terms. Whereas most of the UK universities have longer terms, and sometimes the halls of residence may ask you to lock in for the year. Whereas with the Oxford colleges, you only end up paying for 9, 18, 27 weeks overall, maybe a couple months, maybe 30 weeks of the year. So that actually makes things a bit cheaper too, which is quite handy. Colleges also can provide extra funding for things like travel, research and equipment, so it depends on the college. But with regards to scholarships, which I know I've had a couple of questions about previously, and also when I did the Slido, sadly, there really aren't that many for international students with regards to gaining scholarships at Oxford. There just aren't many at all, and it's something that we are trying to change, because as you saw in the previous slide, it's quite expensive. The best thing to do here is, and I'll pop this in the chat at the end, there is a scholarships online search tool essentially that we have, whereby you can put in the course you want to study, where you're from, when you want to be studying it, and it will show any scholarships that are available to you. But as I mentioned, there just aren't that many with regards to international students, but it may show up some. If not, then what I'd recommend is have a look in your own communities or with your own government first, if possible. So if there's any philanthropic or charitable communities that would give money to or grants to students to go and study in the UK, have a look at those. If the government has any form of financial assistance they can give with regards to studying in the UK, go that way. Because, well, if they say no, you don't have anything extra. But if they say yes, then it's obviously really useful to have, especially since we don't have that much provision for scholarships for international students. Okay, so moving on to applying, and this is where I want to spend a big chunk of time with regards to what actually goes on. It is a bit slightly different to applying to most other UK universities. We all use UCAS, so that is how every UK university, or nearly all UK universities, will receive applications from students, and you apply a year before the start date of your course. Oxford is different, as well as Cambridge and most other universities that offer, or universities that offer medicine as a course, or veterinary science as well as a course, because we need a bit of extra time to process the application, because there are extra steps. So with regards to Oxford, the key dates really is that the actual application, UCAS application, that you would need to put through as a student wanting to study here, they open in early September every year, and the deadline is 6 p.m. on the 15th of October, and that's pretty much been the same for ages, and it will probably be the same for moving forward. So the 15th of October, 6 p.m. UK time. And that just means that you need to make sure that you put in an application to Oxford before that deadline. If you don't put it in, then you miss the application for that year, and you have to wait until the year after, unless you want to go to a different UK university, in which case you have until January. But those other UK universities, they don't need as much time to go through applications. It's the same with Cambridge. So we both have the 15th of October, 6 p.m. in the UK as the deadline. And it's also just worth pointing out that you can only apply to one or the other. So you can only apply to Oxford, and you can only apply to Cambridge in one application year, mainly for the reason of there's so much that we have to go through that it's not worth the hassle of doing those two applications at the same time. As one of the reasons, there are more than that, but that's the main one, is that you can only do one or the other, so you can't apply to both in the same year. This is the timeline, and again, it doesn't really alter too much, and I'm going to break a couple of these extra things down moving forward, but essentially, the steps that we have all come back to a student showing how good they are at the moment with regards to their academia and their potential moving forwards. So that's the only thing that we at Oxford really, or the admissions tutors at Oxford really care about, the admissions tutors. They just want to know what your level is, what a student's level is when they apply, and what their potential is to move on in a degree. And as I mentioned much further back, is that when you're choosing a subject, as you progress through your years, you get to focus and specialize a bit further on as you go in, and that's what the admissions tutors want to see, is how good are they going to be when they start going further into this subject and delving deeper into it. So that's all we care about, the academia now and potential moving forward. And all of these different aspects make that up. So first off, obviously you're going to choose your course, and that's one of the first things that a student should do. I'll get onto the college or open application in a bit, I think, because that's also quite important, but not really related to the academia side of things. Then you have a UCAS application. So in the UCAS application are a couple of different things that we UK universities need to find out about. That's obviously the course you're choosing to do. There's a chart there, you need to write a personal statement, and in that personal statement will cover information on why you want to study the course and your evidence for why you want to study that course as well. You also get to put in an academic reference. So that's from usually from a teacher or a collective of teachers from the school that a student is applying from. And that just backs up essentially saying that, yeah, this student's in the top 10% of students I've ever taught in history. They're that good at history, and that's a good thing for our admissions tutors to hear. That's what the academic reference is there for. And again, this is something that you can compile, and as long as it's submitted before 6 p.m. on the 15th of October, that's step one done. Next up, we've got admissions tests, which I'm going to break down further on. But not every course requires an admissions test. Some do, some don't. So that's something to check up on, but I'll explain why we do those in a bit. Then you've got written work, which is pretty straightforward. It's just a piece of work that you've already written or a student has already written that may or may not be needed for the course. We then have interviews. So they happen normally at the end of the year. So first couple of weeks of December, and then the decision is made. And actually today is the 11th. So decisions would have gone out today for the applicants that were in the most recent cycle. So decisions would be made and being sent out today. So they get sent out via UCAS and also from the college that's processing the application. And that's essentially I'm really sorry, but we haven't been given an offer, or fantastic, here is an offer. And it will be based upon the scores you get in your tests or the qualifications that you have in your country. So those are conditional offers. So the offer is on condition of a student gaining a certain score. Little bit on entry requirements, so that obviously that's quite a useful segue. The majority of applications that we get, the vast majority at A level. So, UK domestic students, but also any school that offers UK A levels. We accept those, but we also offer anything else qualification wise, international qualification wise, that is the equivalent to a high scoring A level grade. So we've got the International Baccalaureate. And then here we've got pre-U and US qualifications as well. These are currently under review, but SAT, you've got the APs as well. But as I said, I will send across the international qualifications website that we have that really breaks down what we'd expect from a US applicant if they're taking US qualifications. So you've got the 3 A's there, an A star and 2 A's, or the highest to achieve 2 A stars and an A. There will be US equivalents for 3 A's, US equivalents for A star AA, and equivalents for A star A. So it really depends on the course you choose. So it may be that you want to do mathematics, which may be A star and 2 A's, and there'll be an equivalent to that. Or it may be that you wanted to study fine art, which is 3 A's. So it really depends on the course you choose, or a student chooses as well, with regards to the qualifications. But that is the minimum benchmark. It'd be it'd be near impossible for a student to get onto a course if they are below that 3 A's and they need to get 3 A's, because again, the most important thing that admissions tutors at Oxford are looking for is current academic ability and potential academic ability, because of the way that we teach and learn here. So that's really, really important. Excuse me. Okay, choosing a college. There's only 2 options, and it really doesn't have any bearing at all on your application itself. You can make a specific preference, probably the best way to say it's a preference for a college. And you can put that on your UCAS application, or you can make an open application. Open application just means that you don't really mind which college you go to. There is no advantage or disadvantage to choosing a specific college. There is no advantage or disadvantage to making an open application. That's it. There is no way around, or maybe getting better odds. They're both the same. It doesn't really matter. The reason why a person may choose a particular college preference, though, is for a couple of reasons. So you've got the size and age, which I already kind of mentioned. If you've got an older college, it may be a bit colder, a bit windier. If you've got a newer college, it's probably going to have better facilities, or at least modern facilities. It may be that it's smack bang in the middle of the city. So Brasenose is on the high street, fantastic position. But if you prefer to be in a quieter place of Oxford, you maybe don't want to go to Brasenose because it's in the centre of the city. It may be that the college itself has some really fantastic grants or funding available. It may be that it's got a gym, or it may be that it's got an agreement with our big sports centre in Oxford, which means that you get to use their gym for free. It may be that it's Magdalen, which is on the river, and they've got all of their own boats, and you can go punting whenever you like. That may be why you choose a college. There's no hereditary applications. So, if you had family or friends that went there, there is no way to get you in at the front of the queue. But that may be a reason why you choose to go to a college. It may be like, well, one of my parents went here, or an uncle or an aunt, or whatever it is, and I really like the look of it, and I'd love to go there. That may be why you choose a college. But there is no advantage or disadvantage to choosing one or making an open application. With an open application, it just means it gets sent across to us. We look at it, and then it gets fired across to a college that has capacity to process that application. Okay, good stuff. Looking more at the UCAS application itself, there are several parts to it which I've already mentioned, and the most important thing really is the personal statement. The personal statement is there really to, again, let the admissions tutors know the motivation you have to study the course that you've chose, or the student has chosen to study. we recommend, and we have sessions throughout the year and on these types of things, and we have a session specifically on the UCAS application and the personal statement. But as an overview, we say to make it 80% academic, so actually talking about the subject itself, and then 20% on extracurricular. And I'll go into that a little bit more now. So when we say super curricular, that is any activity that is linked or based around the subjects that that a student's choosing to study, that is outside of normal schooling. So that could be watching TED Talks, it could be reading books on something, it could be taking part in a physics Olympiad, it could be doing a MOOC, so a mass online course, it could be anything that's outside of school but is focused on the subject. That's a super curricular activity, and that shows commitment and motivation to the course. And the admissions tutors will say, fantastic, but it's also a really good opportunity for the student who's writing the personal statement to reflect on those activities and show what they learned from it. That's really important. With regards to the extracurricular, there's a reason why we say 20% extracurricular, because as I mentioned, we're only really focused on the academia side of things. We don't really care about in a nicest way as possible, we don't care if you are the captain of the soccer team or if you volunteer on the weekends or you're in the chess club or the debating society. That's not really, we don't really mind about that. We want to know how good are you at the subject and what's your potential. However, two reasons why it's still useful to put it in. If you're applying to Oxford, you may well be applying to other UK universities as well. Other UK universities may want to know about your extracurriculars or a student's extracurricular activities, and therefore it's useful to include it. With regards to an Oxford personal statement or a personal statement that's coming to us, we want to maybe see transferable skills from your extracurricular activities. And what I mean by that is, let's say, let's use the volunteering example. You volunteer on the weekend, or a student volunteers on the weekend for the past 3 years, most weekends. That shows a fantastic commitment to doing that volunteering, and it shows motivation. And those are the two things that are really, really useful when studying at Oxford. You need to be committed to your subject, and you need to be motivated to study it, because there's a lot of self-directed study. So those transferable skills from doing your volunteering, you could talk about those briefly to say that, and these will put me in good stead to study at Oxford, doing 40 hours a week, really intensely. That's a good reason to maybe include extracurricular activities, but really it's all focused on the academic side of things. So bear that in mind if when getting around to that point. Admissions tests. So quite a few of our courses do need these, some don't. It really depends on the subject. Everyone who applies sits the same test, and they're really, really useful for us because we have last year just over 24,000 applications for the most recent entry year. And normally, if you're making an application to Oxford, you are, a good candidate, a good, strong candidate. And it's obviously quite tough for us to separate all of these good candidates just from school exams. So one of the, and hence the personal statement, but also admissions tests. So admissions tests allow us to take this pool of really strong candidates, give them the same test, and then stretch them out. So we can see the really good ones are here, but the outstanding candidates are out here. And that's what an admissions test allows us to do. It gets to see who are the outstanding candidates from the strong candidates by having the same test administered on the same day. And therefore we have the same data to look at when we're looking at which students we want to take through and give an offer to. That's what admissions tests are really useful for. Obviously, if a course doesn't need one, it doesn't need one, but most courses, or many of the courses that we offer, will need an admissions test. They can be done where you are. Usually your school will be it, or a school will be it. If not, there are admissions test centres across the world, but also across your country as well. So there are loads of opportunities to be able to take them. There's places to take past papers as well, because they can be it's really useful to practice them essentially. But again, there are sessions on these that I can offer throughout the year for students who are looking at doing them too. So just make sure that, excuse me, you're supported in those. I mentioned written work earlier. This one's quite a straightforward one. Essentially, it's usually one or maybe two pieces of work that you've written or a student has written that's already been marked by a teacher, and they're sent across for the admissions tutors to look at. So off the top of my head, I know that Classics ask for an essay to look at and have a look at too. So again, it really depends on the course if you need to provide written work. If you're going to do fine art, then it's a portfolio. So that's where it's a bit different, but it's a portfolio of your artwork as opposed to any essays that you've done. In interviews, and there really are a lot of myths about these, but essentially, and this should look familiar to what I've already mentioned already, they're just a conversation about the subject that a student's chosen to study with someone who knows a lot about it, which is, for all intents and purposes, a tutorial. It's the same thing. So interviews are a kind of like a tutorial run through, and that again allows our admissions tutors to see what a student's current academic ability is, but also what their potential academic ability is, because they can ask them questions live, face to face, or as recently online over Teams as well. So that's what interviews are there for, and they're a really fantastic opportunity for admissions tutors to find out where a student's at and where they're going to be able to go. And that's essentially it. It's just a really useful conversation that they can have, and that mirrors the tutorial system. With regards to all of these different points that I've mentioned, I'm going to briefly go back to my timeline because I'm nearly finished. So you've got the personal statement, UCAS application, admissions test, written work, interviews, and then obviously school qualifications. All of those things come together, and all of those things are really focused around a student's academic ability. And that's what we're looking at. All of those things are looked at together. So none of these is looked at individually. So people always think, well, a lot of the questions I get is, the interviews are the most important thing. They're not. However, you can only be given an offer if you've made it to interview, but all of the different things are taken together. So if a student doesn't make it to interview, that's the end of their application. But if they do make it to interview, then they get interviewed, and then their interview performance is then looked alongside their interview performance, their admissions test, their written work if they've needed to have done it, their personal statement, and then finally the grades or their predicted grades. So for a lot of students applying, as mentioned, they're applying the year before they're meant to be coming to the university. And that means that teachers, schools need to give predicted grades. So essentially, the school or the teacher for those subjects say, we think that Tom is going to get this score in his final year exams at school. And that's what we need. And then obviously we're basing an offer based on that. And then when I get around to doing the exams, I get the score and I say, great, I got the score that I needed to get in. So predicted grades are quite important because we need to know what a student may achieve or should be achieving, because obviously this student has been in the school system for a couple of years now. So teachers and schools should know what their ability is. Obviously, if schools have mock exams, that's quite useful too, because you can use the results from that to give a predicted grade. But that's what we need essentially to be able to make the decision. And all of this information is gathered for a student, and then we make the decision. And as mentioned, today is, it changes, it's usually the second week of January, but today we are in the second week of January. But the 11th is generally around the time that students get told yay or nay. So if a student has been told yes today, it's a conditional offer based on their performance in their school leaving exams. Now, obviously, some students can and do take a gap year, we call it in the UK, or a year out. So that means that they've done their school qualifications and then they've been out of the school system for a year, and then they may apply. So they already know what their exam results are going to be, which is good because it puts you in a strong position, because you know if you've met the qualifications or not, or the admission requirements. So that's quite useful. The only thing with that, and it's not a bad thing to do, that take a gap year or a year out. I mean, I would encourage it. But with regards to Oxford, the admissions tutors want to know that when you're in that year off, that student who has been on that year off has made sure that they've topped up their sort of interest and links with the subject that they're going to be applying for. If it's a case of just going off and traveling, it's probably not, they may not look at that and go, oh, that's not been the best way to spend the year off. Whereas if they'd taken a year off and wanting to do physics and managed to shadow a lab nearby or be involved in stuff like that, then that's a fantastic way to use that year off, and that would be seen favourably with regards to being able to potentially be given an offer at Oxford. So there's a couple of different things going on there. Okay, and that is me done. I think that's the main bulk of the information that I wanted to talk about. I think I'm going to stop sharing the screen, but I am going to go back to my slide so I can see it, my Slido questions. But I guess in the meantime, I'm going to pop across to the Q&A. and maybe look at some questions that I can answer. I'm just going to see if is it chronological? It is. Fantastic. Lovely. So, okay, what are the main differences in applying to colleges in the US and Oxford? Well, I mean, I kind of went through, hopefully, how you apply to a UK university, specifically Oxford, and you can base that off what the differences are yourself. I mean, we have that really Oxford, other UK universities may just have a personal statement and that's it. We have many more different aspects of the presentation ourselves. So that should have given you a relatively good overview there. My school does not offer HR Maths for IB, which seems to be required for certain programs. Is the way around this? So, Ellen, that's a good question. So, it depends on what you want to study. So, as a generic, again, I can't talk about specific ones, but I guess as a generic course-wise, courses have admission requirements, and one of those, I'm just thinking on the top of my head, computer science. So, if we have computer science at Oxford, we will have certain requirements that you would need to have done as a student. In this case, taking the IB. I'm just going to share my screen again. It's probably the easiest way to do this. I'm just going to minimize that too. Lovely. So computer science, and all of our courses have this. They're really handy. So A to Z course, you can do it that way, or you can just type in computer science into Google and Oxford into Google, and you get it. And we have this traffic light system here. So we've got red, amber, green. And the traffic light system essentially is, okay, so if you want to do computer science, then maths is essential. Further maths is recommended. And if you're unable to take that subject, then there isn't really a way around it. Now, the only thing to double check on would be here. So we can see that if you click to, every course has these tabs across the top. You've got admission requirements. And here you can see it's breaking down the main qualifications that we accept, so A levels, BTEC, IB here. So you've got 39 with 766 at HL, and the 7 must be in HL mathematics. So again, if you're deciding to choose a course where maths is essential, and you're not able to take that specific maths subject, then it would be very tough for anybody to make a competitive application for that course. But then maybe you'd think about doing a different course, which still maybe involves maths. It just depends on, excuse me, what you want to do. So the only workaround really would be to maybe have a look at a different course. So it depends on the course itself. Hopefully that answered your question a bit. I've got a question from Bill, which is legacy students have some preferences for admissions. No, it's meritocratic. It's purely based on a student's academic ability and potential. So if family members went to the college, that doesn't really mean anything to admissions tutors. Now, it's not something that is, it's not something they look at. Okay, it's a fantastic question from Stuart, which is it possible to be granted admission at the age of 80? I used to work at UNSW in Sydney, in Australia. We had a graduate there at 88, I think it was. I'm not entirely sure what our oldest graduate, current undergraduate or postgraduate is at Oxford, but yeah, there's no age limit at all. It may be quite tough for you to apply as an undergraduate, because you need to, again, go through all of these different application stages to get through. But yeah, there's no age limit at all. So, if you want to do it, go for it. Actually, my wife is looking to do a law conversion, and she's 30. I hope she won't mind. She's 35. So, again, age is just a number. Okay, is it best to apply to a college directly or centrally to the university? So, Elena, I hopefully did go over this. Yeah, so you've got a college preference, and it is just that. It's just a preference. So, if you want to go to that college, then great. Don't necessarily will be allocated to that college at all, or you make an open application. It really doesn't matter. The most important thing is you apply through UCAS. That's the most important thing. How would I characterize the difference between Oxford and Cambridge? They're in two different places in the UK. They're both really old. They both have lovely rivers. They're both similar distance to London. We do different courses. That's probably the main difference. We do different courses. We do some courses that are the same, but we do different courses. I mentioned PPE, so philosophy, politics, and economics. Cambridge offer land economy, I think. So there will be differences in the types of course we offer. That's probably the best way to characterize the difference, because we're both really fantastic universities to go to. You're going to get a fantastic education if you send a son or a daughter, or if you want to come here yourself, then it's going to be great. Okay. So Jacqueline's got a question more about joint honours degrees. So are there students who combine maths and music, or biology and arts? So yeah, a good question, because I did sort of cover it, but not very fully. It's not like the US, whereby you're able to potentially do lots of different topics. We do have joint honours degrees, but not many of them. So I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Sorry if it becomes quite small for you. But as you can see here, you have courses like geography and fine art and history and classics. These are single honours degrees, so just the subject that you're doing. Now, you can't just go, okay, I want to do, well, classics is here and geography is here, so I want to do classics and geography. That doesn't happen. It's already been preordained by the university. So you can see here, anything with an and essentially is a joint, or in PPE's case, a triple honours degree. Although you end up doing more P and P than E, or more E and P than P, if that makes sense. So these are already preordained for undergraduate courses. So classical archaeology and ancient history, you've got computer science and philosophy, you've got mathematics and computer science, you've got modern languages and linguistics, physics and philosophy. So they're already chosen. So it's not like you can, sadly, Jacqueline, put two random ones together if you have those interests. But obviously, if you have one of those interests, then what I would say is, I'm just going to stop sharing again. So what you mentioned was maths and music, or biology and arts. I would suggest, if it's you personally, or maybe a son or daughter, so we offer maths, we offer music, we offer biology, and we offer fine arts. I would say choose one of those, and then use the clubs and societies and Oxford City itself as a chance to pursue the others. So if you're really keen on doing mathematics, I'm not, but you might be, do mathematics, and then join one of the music societies at Oxford, or join the local choir or the local orchestra. Do it that way. If you want to do biology, which I'm more on board with because I do chemistry, and you really like the arts, we have a theatres club, a theatre society. The city itself has lots of theatre clubs and societies too. So do it that way. That's probably the better way to do it than to try and find a joint honours degree. Okay, Marina, good question. How long is a bachelor's? BA, so Bachelor of Arts, 3 years. Most of our undergraduate courses are 3 years. If you do a Bachelor of Science, so BSc, those usually are labelled as 4 years, which is a 3-year undergraduate degree, and then a 1-year postgrad degree, so master's essentially. Excuse me. And so, I've lost my train of thought. I apologise. Oh, that was it. Yeah, 3 or 4 years. BA normally 3 years. BSc usually 4 years. Although you can decide not to do it after the 3rd year, and then medicine 7 years. If you really want to put yourself through that, then you can do. Although one note on medicine degrees is international students. There are no quotas on the amount of international students we can have at Oxford for any of the undergraduate courses, apart from medicine. Sadly, that's a UK government restriction. I believe we can only have 13, so that's 13 spaces available for international students to study medicine at Oxford, which is not that many at all. So what is already a very competitive course to try and get onto is hyper competitive for international students, which is a bit of a shame, but I guess there's a reason for that as well. So a question from Zora about applying to Oxford without AP test scores. I will send through the international qualifications information so you can have a look to see what is exactly needed as a US curriculum, a person who's applying from it with a US curriculum. Okay. I will have a look at some of the more generalised questions. So would a British national living in Canada qualify for the UK? Interestingly, that is a question. So and sorry to pass the buck here, I do not like taking questions on visas and immigration, because we have a dedicated team of visa and immigration professionals who will happily take that question and give you a qualified response. So what I'm going to do is pop into the chat a link for and an email address essentially that you can use to get in touch with the visa and immigration team for course fee status on whether you get UK domestic course fees or not, because it is nuanced and it is complicated, and there will be caveats and reasons for why a person may or may not be able to get domestic fees if they are not living in the UK currently. So I'm kind of passing the buck, but I will pop in the web page to look at and the email address for you to chase up to as well. And I've just had a couple of those questions. Okay. Get a good question from anonymous attendee just about the numbers that I provided. So the 1,600 odd people that are US citizens that are studying at Oxford, of which 240 odd were undergraduate. Does that include American students who are exchange students? So it would include, yes, they would be included within that, because so the 246, I think it was, undergraduate US students here, and then all the other number, so the 1,400 odd, 1,350 odd students will be a mixture of master's students, postgrad students, visiting students as well. So it'd be a mixture of those. Sarah, a question from you about international students who stay in England. Yeah, so the colleges generally help with that, maybe not so much the university. So obviously, as I mentioned, a vast majority, not a vast majority, a big chunk of the population of students at the university are international students and therefore come from overseas and therefore quite far away. Colleges know this, we know this, and therefore some colleges, most colleges, this is something to maybe check with them individually, offer either places to store things. So if you need to, when your term's finished and you disappear off, or if you disappear, you can leave your things or the majority of your things with the university. And some colleges, not all, provide elongated accommodation outside of term time, but that's something, again, it depends on the college. The other option, of course, is to do something called live out. Now, you can live out whilst at Oxford. Living out just means that you live in private accommodation, which has its positives and negatives. The positive is that you don't have to you don't get kicked out and have to take all your stuff back with you. But it does mean that you're then privately renting a house or a flat, whatever it is in Oxford, potentially with other friends. So you have it for the year, but then you're paying for the year, whereas as college, you only pay for the 30 odd weeks instead. So there's a balancing act, but most colleges do allow international students to leave things, and some of them, not all of them, may offer accommodation to stay in as well. Okay, does strong sport activity count towards an admissions decision? So again, Bill, thanks for the question. My daughter is planning for Olympic archery. Congratulations, that's great. Is this negative? It's not negative at all, I think. But as I mentioned, there are no admissions decisions based on sporting prowess. It's purely academic. But there will be opportunities to do sports. So I'm pretty sure we have an archery club at the university. Side bit of information. I'm actually from the Midlands, so that's the in the middle of the UK, and there's a place called Lilleshall Sports Centre where they actually have the UK base for UK archery for the Olympics, which takes me about 2 hours to drive home. So I guess your daughter would be 2 hours away from the Olympic archery place in the UK. Side bit of information there for you. But no, it wouldn't impact an admissions decision sport-wise. But it may be something, again, to pop in the personal statement as transferable skills. So commitment to archery and a motivation to do it would potentially be useful to say, well, look, I've been doing this for years, and this puts me in good stead to say I want to do the course that I'm studying because I've shown that quality already. Michael, you've just appeared. It's 1 minute to 2 minutes to the hour.
Yes, Tom. Obviously, still a lot of. I'll leave it to you. We have 2 minutes if you'd like to go over a little bit more, but you're in charge. But
yeah,
just pointing out we're coming up on the 1 hour mark.
More than happy to. I have just seen that, so I've got quite a few questions. I will have to stay for another 5 or 10 minutes for definite. So I will try and get through. I'm going to bear with me, people who are on the call, just while I scroll through some stuff, so I can do more generic or more open questions. So Jonathan, question about interviews. How would a US student, or I guess any international student, interview? Currently, the past 2 years, online. So using Teams was done online. I can't comment, or I don't know yet how it's going to work for the next application cycle. It really depends, but it will be decided by committee, and if only one option will be chosen. So there will be a policy team working on it, and if most policy goes down the route of in person, then all colleges will have to do in person. If it goes down the route of online, then all colleges will do online. We did have a bit of a hybrid approach previously, whereby again, US students, that's a long way to come. There was the possibility of doing a remote interview anyway, well before the pandemic happened. So there will be a mixture, but the majority will return to a particular way of doing it. I don't know, sadly, how that will turn, but when that gets decided, that gets decided. Excuse me. Stephanie, if a student does not meet the predicted score, is the offer rescinded? Yeah, correct. It's a conditional offer. So the offer is conditional on a student meeting specific qualifications. If those specific qualifications aren't met, then the offer is not met, sadly. So that's how that works. Okay. Sorry, again, I'm scrolling, so apologies here. Okay, Rob, quick. Interesting question, which I'm sadly not going to be able to answer, but I have worked with some of our international student ambassadors from America. So do American students transition well to Oxford? Is the 3 years, not the 4 years, a problem for them? I don't think so. And again, if they're choosing a BSc, then it's maybe 4 years anyway. But as mentioned, there is this instant ready-made community that is really beneficial for any student, really, but for international students, you've got this thing where you arrive in college, you're given your parents, and then off you go. And then you've also got we've got so many people from so many different nationalities that there is this you fit in really easily. And Oxford's such a lovely place to live as well, that there are obviously it's a long way away, so you're still not going to be able to get over that barrier, and homesickness does happen. But I think on the whole, yeah, American students do transition quite well. Okay, how can you, so Mark and Katie, how can you take the Oxford admissions test from the US? Yeah, so there is, a school can be a test centre, and if a school isn't a test centre, they can apply to become a test centre. If the school doesn't want to become a test centre, then there are test centres in the US. It's just finding your nearest one. It may be that you may be able to go to a nearby school. They may allow a student to take an admissions test that they're supposed to, but there are ways that they're able to do it. There is a centralized body, so Oxford and Cambridge have them, but they're actually managed by CAAT, which is the Cambridge Assessment Centre. It's Cambridge Assessment Test people. They run it, so they have their own website too, as well. Okay, I'm just going to scroll through and see if there's any more, because I'll probably take another couple and then done. Okay, good question on actually applying. So can a student, I mentioned that you can only apply to Oxford or Cambridge in one academic year. So can a student apply to Oxford and another UK university, not Cambridge? Yes, you actually have 5 choices. So Oxford would be one of those 5. It's just that you've got to put it in early. Then if you're looking to apply to other UK universities, which you may as well do because you've applied to Oxford already, you then have until the end of January, so this month still, to be able to make an application to 4 other courses. So you could choose, but you can only do 1 for Oxford. So you can't then do, okay, I want to study maths at Oxford and then apply to do computer science at Oxford. You can just do the 1 course at Oxford, and then you've got your 4 choices, unless you're studying medicine, in which case you only get 4 choices, which is a bit mean, but that's the rules. That's how it is. I sadly don't know why. Does Oxford care if I go to public or private school in the US? Does Oxford care about the pedigree of my high school? Fantastic question. Very, very good question indeed. I wear 2 hats at the university. One of my hats is this hat, which is international student recruitment. My other hat is outreach, which is working with students from disadvantaged backgrounds to get into the university, and those students will be from underrepresented backgrounds themselves. There is no, we don't care. Short answer. I was going to go into a big sort of get on my soapbox and start having a go. No, we don't care. It's based on academic ability, now current ability, and potential academic ability. That's all we care about. just, I think today, I think 70%, 70, forgive my statistics, but it only came out early and I haven't looked at it again recently. 70% of the offers that we've had for this year of our UK domestic students are from state schools. So as in government schools, comprehensive schools. So that 70% of our offers are going to students from those backgrounds. So we don't care about the pedigree of your high school at all. So fantastic question there. Okay. Somebody asking if we can finish a degree online. No, because at Oxford specifically, there are tests that have to be done, especially in third year, that need to be done in Oxford. So we don't offer online courses for undergraduates, at least. Okay, what else we got? Jacqueline, you did ask about test centers in the US. I'm going to pop in the chat where you'll be able to find that information. So again, sorry, bear with me while I just pop that together. Excellent. Lovely. So what I'm going to do now is I will probably, yeah, Michael, if I'm going to say I'm done. If you would like to say a couple of words, I'm going to pop in the chat for everybody all the links that I've talked about, which should be really useful to send across. So back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Tom. That was obviously a really helpful and comprehensive look at the admissions process for the University of Oxford. And those of you who are in the audience can tell it is quite different than applying to an American university. And we, of course, understand this was a lot of information to absorb. So we will be putting up a slide in just a moment that has contact details for the university's admissions office, undergraduate admissions. As you can see, Tom popped up a number of slides from the admissions website. Lots of information on there, and so wonderful sources of information for you to look at and to access. But again, we'll put up a separate slide that will have contact information as well. This session has been recorded. It will be put up on our YouTube channel. You can look for that online in a couple of days once we've edited it and made sure that it all hangs together well. Tom alluded to the fact that, again, one of the interesting things about Oxford, we don't look at legacies. We don't look at people who are experts in areas outside of their particular area of study. Also, I should note, as a fundraiser, we don't look at people who give a lot of money and helping their children apply. None of those things matter. It is really based on your academic prowess. So motivation to study even harder, do even better in your academic work, because really at the end of the day, that's what Oxford admissions is all about. So again, thank you, Tom, for a terrific session. And thank you all for joining us today. And please stay on and for the contact information. And if you do need to find our website, it is Oxford NA, www.oxfordna.org, and will be additional information posted on our website as well. So on behalf of all of us at the University of Oxford, thank you for joining us, and stay well.